I often get questions regarding spiritual awakening. And one such question is, when we get this realization that nothing matters after spiritual awakening, how is the person supposed to function in the world? So, first, let me explain what do I mean by spiritual awakening. So, I start with the following. Spiritual awakening is only a concept. Okay, and the concept is very simple. Spiritual awakening is a dent in the structure of the personality. In other words, it is the realization that everything comes with the dualistic opposite. So, happiness accompanies unhappiness. And that is the crack in the structure of the personality. Now, what happens is that when we realize this is an instantaneous realization. And we see that no matter what I do in life, no matter how much money I make, what type of relationship I get, property, fame, adulation, admiration, no matter what I get, it comes with the opposite. So there is always pain and suffering attached to every idea of happiness. So, in other words, everything seems empty, hollow. Nothing is concrete in life. But then, how is the person supposed to function? And my answer is very simple. The person is supposed to function as the person is programmed. You see, it is not that all of a sudden the person is transformed into a sage like character, which is also a concept, because of spiritual awakening. We have this fantasy that spiritual awakening means there is experience of divine bliss which stays present all the time, and that the person is not touched by any unhappiness or any suffering, which is not true. The person is impacted by the adverse circumstances after awakening, just as they would experience before awakening. But there is a difference. Before awakening, a story constantly lurks in horizontal time that something bad happened to me. I didn't get my due. I should have done this. I should have done that. All the should have, could have, would have. I must do this. I must do that. All those things are strong. But after awakening, when there is a crack in the structure, when it is understood that happiness accompanies unhappiness, that life is an alternating cycle of pain and pleasure, mostly pain with only few rounds of pleasure here and there. The acceptance of that brings about a transformation where the person does not cling to happiness or become aversive to unhappiness. So there is acceptance. As a result, there is no suffering in horizontal time as thinking. But in the moment, the person acts and reacts exactly the same. In the moment, the suffering is exactly the same. There is no difference. It is not that your triggers all of a sudden disappear. However, that said, there is another concept called deliverance, which means as this understanding goes deep into the being and becomes one's embodiment, then there is less reactivity. So the reactions reduces, the reactivity reduces. Even the intensity of hurt may reduce in certain things while it may remain the same in others. There is definitely no suffering in horizontal time because it is understood that everything is an happening and nobody does anything. So the sense of personal doership as a separate entity gets eliminated after spiritual awakening. But it is a gradual process, and that process is called deliverance. Yes, we know, instantaneously we know when the awakening happens that it is all empty. There is no true meaning, purpose to anything. But does that mean we should just sit passively, completely inactive, and do nothing about anything just because there has been this realization that nothing matters? And if you think so, I will say try doing that. Try to be inactive. And I can challenge you that inactivity is not possible. And this has been mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. The organism by design cannot be inactive. The organism by design cannot be thoughtless either. That is our biology. Thoughts will also come up. But there will be a change. The change is that our association with the thought, our grasping of the thought reduces. So, my role as I am this, I am that, I am great, I am useless, I am doctor, I am a lawyer, I am a big professional, I am a businessman, I am an actor, I am whatever I am, so and so. That begins to eliminate. Even the negative associations that I am helpless, I am poor, I don't have much money, my life is not good, fate doesn't shower me with wealth and this and that. All of those things, they begin to dissolve. Because at the core of it, this structure, me or I, is now not as solid as it used to be. Before awakening, this was solid. Again, quote unquote, before awakening, it was solid. But now it's not so solid anymore. But it is there. It has not been eliminated. It will never be eliminated. Till the body exists, till the organism is there, it is required for interhuman interaction, for living daily life. Because that identification provides for daily functioning. Because when you're hungry, it tells the body to consume food. When you're crossing the road and there's danger on the road, it tells you to be mindful. When your bills are pending, it tells you to work and pay the bills. So you see, after awakening, the person, there may not be too much observable difference in the person. The perception, the persona may seem more or less the same. Of course, on the surface, it may seem like that. But internally, there will be a lot of peace. Because there will be no clinging, no grasping to anything. As everything is accepted. Which includes the acceptance of one's helplessness in not being able to accept certain things about life. For example, someone may be conditioned with very low tolerance towards violence. Now, they will totally accept that there is violence in the world. And they will also accept, after awakening, that the organism is very sensitive to violence. And there's nothing the organism can do about it. So that is the total acceptance. So what you see is authenticity. What you see is, I would say, total selfishness. The problem usually is partial selfishness. But when we have totally accepted ourselves, total selfishness is complete selflessness. They're one and the same. Another way I can explain it is with the following analogy. Let's say you are playing a character in a movie. Now, what would you do to research the character, to play the character most efficiently? If the character is given to you with a set of attributes, good qualities, bad qualities, now if the actor who's going to play that character is told that, or the actor comes up with this conviction that, no, I'm going to play only attributes A, B, but not C and D. I'm just going to play the good part. I'm not going to play the bad part that he exhibits. Then what is happening is that the original character is completely destroyed. In fact, a new character has been created, which is not sincere. But what happens? That all of a sudden, this character, which is trying to play that original character, realizes that he or she is just playing a character. It is unreal. Now, they consciously decide to play the part and totally embodying all the features, including the good and the bad ones. Now, there is total ease and complete immersion in what is being played out. So that is when this character trying to play that character totally enjoys each and every aspect of the play because he or she doesn't take anything that seriously. Thereby, what I'm trying to say is, you know that the game has to be played. You cannot escape the game. Okay? Because this is simple imprisonment and it's called life. So the game has to be played. Now play with the awareness that you are both the teams. You are team A and team B playing against each other. You are both. Now you enjoy the game totally without worrying about who wins or who loses. When the character totally immerses themselves in the fiction that is being played, in the fictional character that is being played, that is when this character truly enjoys the play, lives the most out of it, and the performance is genuine, authentic. So that is the change that happens after spiritual awakening. Your life becomes a series of observation, and you act and react according to the person's programming, the mind body organism's programming. You're not worried about what is right, what is wrong, what is moral, what is immoral. Well, on a relative scale, those things are there, but you're not too much concerned about them. You will live with a moral code because that is required living in society, but that is not a part of your identity anymore. Therefore, the understanding is that even though nothing matters, I must do whatever I think in the moment I should do. Because life has to be lived. And when it is lived with this attitude, as Ramesh Balsekar would say, that when one's attitude towards life is of total acceptance and not directed towards its flow, that is surrender to what is. That is peace. That is bliss. That is what he calls enlightenment. So even though for the person who's undergoing a process right now where this central entity me is breaking down. And he or she may think that nothing really matters. But inactivity is not possible. So eventually, the organism starts to become more and more spontaneous. That means less obstructive thinking is present, and more constructive, creative thinking takes over. So he or she doesn't worry too much about what is right and what is wrong, or what results will be produced through personal effort, because it is recognized that there is no such thing as personal effort. Everything is being done, and the individual character is just an instrument of execution through which things are happening. And it is the surrender and recognition of oneself as the instrument of consciousness that one feels relief. This is freedom. So there is no one particular way a person is supposed to function after spiritual awakening. To say that person should be a certain way is just projecting one's own fantasy onto another. What happens is that as surrender happens more and more, what one realizes is that a person by nature is happy and easeful and easygoing, relaxed. One can see calmness and peace on their faces. They're not rigid about things. They're pleasant, more or less pleasant to communicate with. Unless you rub them the wrong way, then the default conditioning takes place. And that doesn't care about awakened, non awakened. So you see this whole idea that, nothing matters. I would say, to whom? To whom? It is only that identification which is now breaking down as a result of this insight, this very powerful knowledge that I am not the doer, which is questioning this. And as it dissolves more and more, the unease begins to dissolve. And the mind body organism experiences more spontaneity, lightness, and simplicity. That's it.